The emotional truth behind a hidden bond no one understood. Before you scroll away, stop right here because what is about to unfold is not a scandal, not a controversy, and not a destruction of reputation, but something far more powerful that shook the entertainment world in an entirely different way. And if you stay until the end, you will understand why one emotional revelation between Yu Menglong and Bai Lu completely changed how fans view loyalty, support, and silent sacrifices inside the industry. And you need to stay until the end, because this is not what anyone expected. For years, Yu Menglong was known for his calm presence, quiet professionalism, and almost distant perfection in the public eye. He never chased attention. He never exaggerated emotion. He simply existed in a controlled space of consistency that made him respected but never fully understood. Bai Lu, on the other hand, was seen as vibrant, expressive, and emotionally open in interviews, someone who carried both charm and resilience in equal measure. Together, they were never officially defined by anything beyond professionalism. At least, that is what the public believed. Until the letters appeared. It began with a quiet moment online. A set of handwritten pages surfaced unexpectedly, not promoted, not announced, not part of any official content release. At first, people thought it was another fan theory, another attempt to create meaning where none existed. But something about these letters felt different. They were not performative. They were not polished. They felt personal in a way that made people pause longer than they intended. The first letter was simple, almost painfully simple. It spoke about strength in silence, about how people often misread quietness as absence, when in reality it is sometimes just observation. But what caught attention was not just the words, but the emotional weight behind them, because they appeared to reflect a private understanding between two people navigating intense pressure in very different ways. As more letters surfaced, a clearer picture began to form. Not of drama, not of conflict, but of quiet emotional support that had never been publicly acknowledged. Messages that suggested one person had consistently reminded the other to stay grounded during periods of emotional exhaustion and industry pressure. Reminders that success does not erase fatigue, and that visibility does not protect someone from internal struggle. One letter described a moment after a long filming schedule where exhaustion had made everything feel heavier than usual. It described silence more than conversation, presence more than explanation. A moment where simply staying was more meaningful than saying anything at all. Fans reading it began to realize something unexpected. This was not about publicity. It was about emotional grounding. Another message spoke about encouragement during a period of self-doubt. Not encouragement built on fame or recognition, but encouragement rooted in identity. A reminder that worth does not shrink just because confidence temporarily does. That setbacks do not redefine talent. They only test resilience. As these letters spread, the internet reaction became overwhelming. People were emotional, not because of scandal, but because of relatability. Because many people recognized that kind of quiet support in their own lives. And suddenly, Yu Menglong and Bai Lu were no longer being discussed as distant public figures. They were being discussed as human beings navigating unseen emotional realities. Then came the moment that brought everything into public focus. During a press appearance, when asked indirectly about the letters, Yu Menglong paused longer than expected. Not to avoid the question, but to choose his words carefully. And when he spoke, he did not deny anything. Instead, he explained something simple, that sometimes the most important encouragement never leaves private spaces. That not everything meaningful is meant to be broadcast, and that silence often carries more understanding than explanation. The reaction in the room shifted immediately. Not confusion, but reflection. Because his response was not defensive. It was thoughtful, and it changed the tone of the entire conversation. Later, Bai Lu was asked about it during an award event. The question was direct. The atmosphere tightened, but her response was calm. Almost softly reflective. She said that there are people who help you stay steady during moments when you feel like you are losing yourself to pressure, and that not all support needs recognition to be real. That single response became one of the most replayed emotional moments of the year. What followed was unexpected. Old interviews were rewatched. Scenes were reinterpreted. Moments once considered ordinary began to feel meaningful in hindsight. But instead of fueling controversy, it sparked something else entirely. A broader conversation about emotional resilience in the entertainment industry. People began talking about how many struggles remain invisible behind success. How many performers quietly endure pressure without ever expressing it publicly. And how rare it is for support systems to exist without needing attention or validation. And slowly, the narrative shifted completely. From speculation to understanding. From assumption to empathy. Because at its core, this was never a story about exposure. It was a story about quiet human connection in a world that rarely allows it to stay private. A story about emotional support that existed without performance. And loyalty that never needed an audience. And that is why this moment stayed with people. Not because something was revealed, but because something was finally understood. That behind every calm public image, there may be unseen moments of care that never make it to the surface. And those moments matter more than anyone realizes. If this story moved you, stay connected for more emotionally intense cinematic narratives exploring the hidden emotional world behind fame, pressure, and silent support that exists when no one is watching. The story did not end when the letters went viral. In fact, that was only the beginning of something far more emotionally complex, something the public did not fully understand at first, something that was not about exposure anymore but about consequences, understanding, and the weight of being seen too clearly after years of silence. Because once private emotions enter the public space, they stop belonging to the people who created them. They belong to everyone. And that changes everything. In the days after the letters spread across the internet, the entire entertainment industry shifted into an unusual state of silence. Not denial. Not confirmation. Silence. The kind that happens when people are carefully watching a situation that they do not fully know how to respond to. Yu Menglong did not appear publicly for several days. Bai Lu continued filming, but something about her presence felt different. Not broken. Not disturbed. Just quieter, as if every movement carried awareness that she was now being interpreted differently by millions of people she had never met. And then, the unexpected happened. A private message surfaced again. Not another leak, but something intentional. A handwritten page posted through an official channel with no explanation. No context. Just words. It read like a continuation of everything that had been misunderstood. It spoke about how support does not always look dramatic. How care is often invisible. How people assume distance where there is actually respect for privacy. And most importantly, it clarified something the public had started to blur. That emotional support does not always define a relationship, it defines humanity. That single message changed the direction of the entire conversation online. Because suddenly, the narrative was no longer about mystery or speculation. It became about intention. About how easily private kindness can be misunderstood when seen through a public lens. Meanwhile, Bai Lu finally addressed the situation again during a controlled press interaction that no one expected would go deeper than surface-level questions. The room was calm at first. Standard questions. Standard answers. Until someone asked her what the letters truly meant to her. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Reporters stopped typing. Cameras stabilized. Everyone waited for a carefully managed response. But Bai Lu did not rush. She took a breath. Not dramatic. Just steady. And then she spoke honestly. She said that there are moments in life when people support you without needing recognition. Moments where survival is not visible to the outside world. And she said something that made the entire room go quiet. She said not everything that helps you grow is meant to be seen by everyone. There was no follow-up answer needed after that. Because everyone understood what she meant. Even without full details. Even without confirmation of anything beyond what had already been shared. Later that same week, Yu Menglong finally appeared in public again. The expectation was tension. Avoidance. Carefully controlled statements. But what happened instead surprised everyone. He did not distance himself from the situation. He did not deny the emotional tone of the letters. He did something far more unexpected. He normalized it. He explained calmly, that people often forget how much pressure exists behind the scenes of public careers. He spoke about exhaustion, about responsibility, about how easy it is for people to misunderstand silence as absence. And then he said something that completely reframed everything. He said support does not need to be visible to be real. The reaction was immediate but different this time. Not shock. Not controversy. Understanding. Because people were no longer reacting to secrets. They were reacting to perspective. And slowly, the entire story began to shift in meaning. What once looked like a dramatic revelation became something softer. Something more human. A reminder that emotional support in high-pressure environments often exists in ways that never reach the public eye. Not because it is hidden, but because it is private. As time passed, both Yu Menglong and Bai Lu returned to their work schedules. Interviews resumed. Filming continued. Public appearances stabilized again. But something had permanently changed in how fans viewed them. Not as isolated public figures, but as people who had experienced something quietly meaningful behind the scenes of an industry that rarely allows privacy to remain intact. Old footage resurfaced online, not as proof of anything hidden, but as moments reinterpreted through new understanding. A glance that once seemed ordinary now felt thoughtful. A pause that once seemed neutral now felt intentional. A silence that once felt empty now felt full of meaning. But the most important realization did not belong to fans alone. It belonged to the audience as a whole. Because the story had evolved beyond its original emotional shock. It had become something reflective. A mirror into how people interpret connection when they are not given full context. And then, without any major announcement or dramatic conclusion, the conversation around the letters gradually softened. Not because people forgot, but because they understood differently now. There was no scandal to resolve, no conflict to end, no mystery to solve. Only the realization that not every emotional truth is meant to be consumed like entertainment. Some are meant to be understood quietly. In the final reflection of this story, what remained was not controversy, but awareness. That behind fame, behind recognition, behind public perception, there are always layers of human experience that never fully enter the spotlight. And sometimes, those unseen layers are where the most genuine moments of connection actually live. Because in the end, this was never a story about exposure. It was a story about misunderstanding what silence really means. And rediscovering that sometimes, the strongest form of support is the one that never asks to be seen at all.